Welcome into the 615 Sessions podcast. Hope you're having a great Friday afternoon. Thanks for hanging out here with us. Just me on this Friday before Christmas. Hope that's not too disappointing. Figure we give some of the guest co-hosts the week off, though there is Titans news to talk about. We'll get into it together. You're going to hear from Mike Vrabel and DeAndre Hopkins. We've got an update on Caleb Farley and Will Levis, potentially. His availability for Sunday, not yet determined. So worth getting into over the course of the next couple of minutes or so. Happy to have you guys in here for the 615 Sessions podcast. As you know, it's made possible by the great people at Two Rivers Ford. Powered by Ford, driven by people, and Relax the Back. A great last-minute Christmas present, by the way. If you're having some back pain, some neck pain, go check out their comfort. All their different comfort options, whether that's mattresses, pillows, massage chairs, office chairs, so many standing desks. I have a standing desk from Relax the Back, and I'm telling you, it has made all the difference in the world for me. We're not using it right now because that's not a productive way to do the podcast, but every other time, the standing desk. This is currently what the podcast is sitting on. Relax the Back, hashtag we've got your back, Nashville. Okay, so it feels a little tanky with what's going on with the Titans, and that's not what you want to see. It's tough to get excited about the Tennessee Titans when they've got as many injuries compounded with the elimination from the postseason contention. And now this game coming up on Christmas Eve. The latest is that Amani Hooker has been placed on injured reserve. Trammell says he hopes it's tanky. Well, listen, you may get what you want for no other reason than they're just running out of bodies, because if these players were available and healthy to play, I very much imagine that they would play. For example, Jeff Simmons has not been placed on injured reserve, though it would have been easy to make the decision to shut him down. Now, that may be Jeff's choice. I can't speak to that. Amani Hooker is not going to – I don't think Amani Hooker is going to talk to the media anytime soon. But Kenneth Davidson says he doesn't even know Hooker was hurt. There was 14 Titans that did not practice on Wednesday. A lot of them got banged up in this game, and a lot of them have been dealing with a variety of different stuff throughout the course of the season. Gibbons, for example, I know has been dealing with a variety of different injuries, and he's been working through it to the best of his ability. I think it's affected his play. I think he's been he's not an ideal player for a variety of different reasons, but I think a lot of fans have kind of knocked him for his production when I think he's done well to kind of fight through it. And we don't know about all the different stuff that players play through throughout the course of the season. If you're out there, if you're available on game day, you're expected to produce, and that is how the National Football League works. But this is a game for the Titans that you're going to see a lot of different pieces and parts. Perhaps you'll learn something about depth guys who may be able to make the roster next year. Perhaps somebody will continue to build upon this in the next 3 weeks and try and make a name for themselves, i.e. Treylon Burks or Josh Wiley. Peter Skoronski can continue to get better. Jalen Duncan and Will Levis, if he's available to play, which we'll get to here in just a little bit. Before we really get into it, reminder, like the video. If you're hanging out with us on YouTube, we do the 615 Sessions podcast every Friday because there's no prime time. And there won't be prime time for a couple of days. So I figure with all the different news and all the different days that we're going to miss with the holidays coming up, we better jump on here and get into it. So Amani Hooker added to the list of Titans placed on injured reserve. He joins a great many. Shaquille Brown, Chance Campbell, Julius Chestnut, Christian Fulton, Hassan Haskins, who many of you have been asking about lately, but I think forgot about that earlier in the year. Of course, Chris Hubbard, Kearis Jackson, who looked like he may be a contributor for them in some form or fashion, suffered an ankle injury in the preseason. We never saw him again. I heard it wasn't particularly close to him coming back at any point this year, so it must have been significant to cost him time. Speaking of linebacker depth, I brought up Gibbons, Joe Jones, Kyle Pecco, NPF, Ryan Stonehouse, and earlier this week, Nick Westbrook-Akina. Who all of those players are on injured reserve. So it's not just that your top end talent is not ideal already. It's that you're dealing with a variety of different injuries right now. Gilbert on Facebook asks, who do you think will get in the offseason? I have no idea. They've got 3 more weeks. yet to play. Unfortunately, Gilbert, I cannot. I mean, well, unfortunately, to a degree, I also am not crazy about the idea of like already talking about the NFL draft. We'll get more into it, I promise, with the podcast. But while there's still regular season games going on, like I've still got to cover this stuff. I've still got to, go talk to players on a regular basis who are on this year's team, and we'll get to the offseason in plenty of time. Don't worry, we're going to have a lot of time to talk about a lot of the same positions that it feels like we've been spending the better part of 4 years on, which is super frustrating. But this is kind of the circumstance that they're in. John Bopp says he's also on injured reserve for the Titans. And, I had somebody ask me, I think we were talking about Nick Westbrook-Ikhine on Twitter. And I had made the case after they shut him down earlier in the week. This guy is a real good soldier. And I know Titans fans get frustrated with how much he plays. It's not his fault that he's imminently available. I would love him back on the roster for a cost-effective price to be a 3, or even in a perfect world, a 4, because I trust NWI more than I don't, even if he's not the best player. Like, he's not the best player in the world, but he's one of these guys, whether you want to, use a cliche like glue guy or something like that. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is a good player. I would want him over Chris Moore. I would want him over Colton Dow. In a perfect world, Colton Dow would be able to replace him at some point. But if you're talking about reliability on a team where guys aren't really reliable, my case was for NWI to come back next season, given that he'll be a free agent. And somebody responded to me on Twitter saying not only did they not want NWI back, they didn't want even Titans media back. They didn't want me back. They didn't want Lucas back. They didn't want, I'm sure many of you have been trying to get rid of Karski for years. Even though we love him. And I think you guys enjoyed having him back on the podcast. It's been a while since we've had the Chief. But you can't get rid of us. You can't get rid of this year's football team just yet. So patience is not something I know many of you are willing to hear right now, but I promise we will get to the offseason. So with that being said, Amani Hooker, the latest to go on injured reserve, feels a bit tankish, probably a good thing. You still want to play to win? Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if you got draft position. Now, to the second, it's probably the most important thing beyond the injuries, but Will Levis being questionable, I think is a good sign. I don't know how close of a call it's going to be. I'll see if we can't find out before Wyatt and I do our Titans Insider segment, or before we do the Lee Company Countdown on Christmas Eve, because of course, if you're going to the game, we'll be out there hanging out. Come say hi at the Pro Shop at Gate 1. Always cool to see you guys out there. And I know many of you are going to be having fun anyway, even if your football team is a bit disappointing this year. It's a lot of people. I was talking to Mina Kimes on the radio show today. Her family lives in Nashville. Her brother and I think her parents are going to the Seahawks-Titans game because they live in Nashville. They're going to go see the Seahawks, and something fun to do on Christmas. I don't know how many Titans fans want to spend their Christmas watching the Tennessee Titans right now, but, still nice to see you guys out there from time to time. Rishi says Chris Moore is reliable. I agree, but he's not more reliable than Westbrook-Ikhine all the way around. Chris Moore is an incredible special teams player, and he's made a couple of plays this year that you're pleased with. I think you would rather have Chris Moore than not have Chris Moore, but if you made me pick, is my point between NWI and Chris Moore, personally, I would rather see NWI there. Corey Smith says on Facebook Live that Dow was a wasted pick. I disagree. It's a 6th-round wide receiver. I don't know what else you're going to do in the 6th round that's of substance. I mean, you have a left tackle. He's starting for you. I don't think that Colton Dow, just because he plays primarily on special teams and has earned special teams opportunities, instead of just being a practice squad guy, I don't think that's a bad thing for a 6th-round pick. If he turns into something, great. That's how NWI started, right? He's an undrafted rookie free agent out of Indiana, and he was not a good receiver in his COVID camp. He was a COVID UDFA. Him and Tart were the only ones that ended up turning into anything consistently meaningful. And I know that Tart's consistency was pretty regularly in question. So that NWI is the best thing to come out of the 2020 class of rookies, even though he wasn't even a draft pick. says a lot. And we'll get to Caleb Farley, who I know was 21, but we'll get to Caleb Farley, speaking of draft picks, here in just a moment. So to that point, Colton Dow and MWI, they both kind of have the same trajectory, and we don't need to get bogged down into that. But my point being, that's the kind of guy you want to see back on this roster next year. Amani Hooker, even though it's disappointing to see his season end that way, I thought he was playing good football. I know he was playing good football over the course of the past couple of months. Titans didn't have a ton of turnovers this year. Amani Hooker did not have an interception. Actually, no, I'm sorry. He did have an interception. Played in 13 games. Let's see. Totaled, we've got 22 passes defensed. He had the interception. And I can't remember specifically what. I feel like the interception was pretty recently. I need to go back and look at my game logs for 2023. Let's see. Oh, he had the pick in New Orleans. Okay, that's why. Was that a pick? I'm trying to remember the New Orleans game. I thought he forced a fumble in the New Orleans game, not an interception. I don't remember that. Oh, no, it's saying that he recovered a fumble too. Do you guys remember him picking Derek Carr off in the New Orleans game? Either way, that's where his interception is credited. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but okay. So he had an interception, had a good season, I thought, and especially got better. Settled in with him and Molden. I thought the two of them were playing good enough football. Molden had a pick six. He was on the radio show earlier this week as well. You can go check out that interview, Mina Kimes, to get ready for this Titans-Seahawks game if you have any more interest in previewing it than you might otherwise. But I think that on the whole, Amani Hooker paying dividends on that contract. Tough to see him end another year with injury, given that last year was basically, I don't want to call it a lost season, but it felt like any progress that he could have made was kind of washed away by how much time he missed. And then NWI, he'll be in free agency. He was making, just north of $1 million this year. Would absolutely take him back on a similar contract. He's a vested veteran now for time spent in the NFL, so that will pay dividends for him. And so the price on NWI will be maybe a little higher than it was this offseason. But you've got money to spend, and if you're going to spend it wisely, it's tough to kind of blow everything up when you do have guys on the roster who your current quarterback and your future quarterback in Will Levis trust. Corey D. Jackson says, get on the phone with Autry's agent now. Yeah, Danico is also a free agent and on an expiring contract. We will see what happens there. That's going to be a fascinating one. I need to check it. Danico, I believe, is 33 right now. So he's not like ancient, but by NFL standards, he's been in the league for a long time. Quick reminder that the podcast is presented by Relax the Back. Hashtag We've Got Your Back Nashville. Those are words to live by. You can go visit the Relax the Back store in Green Hills. It's got all kinds of great options for you. And even right now, when you go to relaxtheback.com, they've got 20% off chairs and desks, 20% off office chairs. They have their best sale of the day and also a sale on premium neck pillows. I've been having some like upper back, kind of lower neck type of pain lately. And I'm currently shopping for pillows. I'm in the market for pillows, and Relax the Back is the first thing on Christmas presents that I'm buying myself. I'm going to Relax the Back. You should too, for all of your back related needs. So a couple of different things. Will Levis questionable for the game. I would prefer to see him out there if he's available to play, if he's healthy enough to protect himself. Dude needs reps. Want to see it happen. I know a lot of you guys are in favor of shutting him down for the season in Will Levis, but Mike Vrabel was asked about the status of his quarterback at the end of practice today, and this is what the coach had to say.
How has Will progressed this week, and can you share his status for the game?
Questionable. So we'll see where that goes, but that's where the status will be. Progressed, a little bit, and we'll continue to work with him, and he'll continue to get treatment.
So that's Mike Vrabel speaking about the quarterback situation, that he's even questionable and did practice today as an improvement. Doesn't mean that he's guaranteed to start on Sunday. And my gut still tells me, and my gut still feels that it'll be Ryan Tannehill. As we sit here on Friday, I know they'll have a walkthrough tomorrow. They'll make their final determinations as they also make their final roster moves for those of you guys who are listening to this podcast as a recorded episode as opposed to the live stream that we're doing right now. But I think if he's not healthy enough to protect himself, then you can't put him out there. Obviously, they wouldn't. But if he is, I know you want to get him safely to the offseason, but the quarterback needs reps. Just the same as I'd like to see him play in the preseason. I want to see him work with Hopkins more. I want to see him work with this offensive line more. Any chemistry that he can build with his teammates, any reps that he can get with his teammates, game reps, actual reps, really, really need to see. Really need to see that from him right now. Denny says on Facebook Live, I love Arden Key saying, we want to ruin teams' chances. Yeah, you can still play spoiler for the Texans and for the Jags. Just because both of those teams have gotten you and you haven't won a game in the AFC South yet, doesn't mean you can't mess around and cause some problems. Jacksonville is anything but secure. And I know they basically ran roughshod over you in Jacksonville earlier in the season, but road games in the NFL are always difficult. The Jags have way more on the line, obviously, than you do. And so why can't you mess around and win a football game at the end of the year? That doesn't really matter, but allows you to stick it to the Jags. I like the idea of sticking it to your divisional rivals. I think I always advocate for more hate in sports. That's a great way to kind of, get one over on them, especially if you can knock them out of postseason positioning, or in the case of the Texans, hell, in the case of the Jags, that's anything but a safe division for them. You could keep the Jags from winning the AFC South. Wouldn't that be fun? Andrew Brown says, makes sense. Ruin your chances at a better pick to ruin other people's chances shows your priorities. Oh, no, make no mistake, Andrew. Me personally, I don't give a shit about where you draft, especially not right now, especially not before Christmas. That doesn't mean anything to me. I acknowledge that a better draft pick would potentially put the organization in a better position to succeed. I also acknowledge that the NFL draft is anything but a perfect science, and that you've had first-round draft picks. You've whiffed on 3 of the last 4. I don't know about Skoronski. It's still too early to tell. He's had a bad month of football. I think he's largely going to end up being a good player. Right now, he looks like a rookie on a bad offensive line. So you've had first-round picks. The problem is you haven't hit any of them. We're talking about a franchise that has drafted 11 players over the course of drafts from 2020 to 2022 in the top 100. One of them I consider definitively good. One of those players, Roger McCreary. The other 2 that you would even have to consider hits are Christian Fulton, who all of you want to run out of town with pitchforks and torches. You want to literally chase him down the streets, out of town in free agency this year, Christian Fulton. And the other is Elijah Molden, who I think is a functional player. I think he's a good player. I think he can have a role on next year's roster. But Elijah Molden's anything from I don't know. It's not like I don't consider him an irreplaceable player. I think he's a good locker room guy. I think he's got a great attitude. And I think he's a hard worker. I don't know that he's the most athletic defensive back out on the field. I don't want to call him slow. He's an NFL athlete, but there's just a fluidity of movement that he doesn't seem to have, or that I haven't seen him have consistently enough. That, like, for example, Amani Hooker is one of the best players in space that the Titans have. And Elijah Molden has his moments, and I'm certainly not trying to denigrate him after Case Keenum just straight up threw him one and he took it to the house. It was a great play by Molden and well done on him. But, listen, guys, just because you're going to have you're going to have a top 10 draft pick at some point. I don't expect you to win out. All right. You shouldn't either. So in the absence of that, yeah, I really don't give a shit about where they draft. If it's almost predetermined to be in the top 10, and if it's not top 10, then it's 11 or 12. You still have to hit on the draft pick. That's the whole reason it's the main reason John Robinson's not here. The A.J. Brown is a thumb in your eye. The A.J. Brown trade is the just twisting the knife a little bit. The reason John Robinson's no longer here is because their drafts have been nightmarish since 2019. And we'll see if 2023 can't make up some ground. They look to have some functionality to them. Al Andretti says we are ass. Yes, currently you are, and it is incumbent upon your organization to fix you. Now, somebody who is not underwhelming is DeAndre Hopkins. And DeAndre Hopkins, actually, before we move on, since we're on defensive backs and we were talking about Molden and McCreary and Fulton and those guys, Caleb Farley did come back to practice. He's not off the PUP. Mike Vrabel was asked about him today, given that he has been making some strides and been out there working, and this was the head coach's response.
Oh yeah, a little bit of a start. It's been a long road, and he's worked hard, and really just trying to get him back out here with his teammates. There'll be no Caleb won't play.
Well, I'm talking about just to start his process.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let me talk to him. He won't play this year, but this is good to get him out there and continue to do the individual and see some football, and then we'll see where things go from there. And that's a testament to him to work hard to get back.
So that's Mike Vrabel on Caleb Farley saying, if you let me talk, I'll tell you that he's not going to play football this year. Jimmy just trying to get a question in. Completely understand. So, I mean, listen, as we talk about first-round draft picks that have missed, I want nothing but the best for Caleb Farley. And I know that it has to be so frustrating to you. And if Isaiah Wilson's not on the roster, then Caleb Farley physically is the embodiment of a lot of your draft disappointments. I get that. But the guy's story is heartbreaking. I mean, even if you are the most cold of sports fans and have zero human emotion about you, the amount of personal and physical devastation that this kid has undergone this is his third year in the league, and he's been able to do nothing. And in the process has just had hurdle after hurdle to overcome. So I think that, it doesn't really cost them anything to keep him next year. You certainly don't have to pick up the 5th-year option. Just for him, you got to find some kind of positive momentum to see if you can turn him into anything at all. And even then, you don't have to keep him. But for his sake, man, you just hope that guy's situation, that he catches a break, that he honestly just catches a break. And he's had a great attitude about it. I know Titans media caught up with him in the locker room this week, and he continues to have a positive attitude about it. But how anybody could be able to operate I couldn't even imagine what it is to operate in that kind of a mental space. And I have no idea what's going on in Caleb Farley's head. Only he can speak to that. And all he's done is be, I know he's leaned a lot on his faith. He's talked a lot about that. A lot of his social media messaging is about that. And I know he does still have family around him to support him in the absence of now both of his parents, but it's a mess. Okay. So from Farley to Hopkins, a bit of good news, a bit of positivity in what feels like a lot of bad as of late. DeAndre Hopkins is closing in on 1,000 yards this season. That is a small, consolation prize to what the DeAndre Hopkins experience could potentially have been had this team been better this year. Frankly, for DeAndre Hopkins, who did not get a call from a lot of teams that could really, really use him, not to kind of stick it to Titans fans, but damned if there's not teams all over the place, especially in Kansas City, in the postseason that couldn't, or that are set to make the postseason, that couldn't have used DeAndre Hopkins. He's had 59 catches, 919 yards, 6 touchdowns on the season. He's still got 3 games left to play and stands to play on Sunday. I think that for DeAndre Hopkins, while he was deferential, we'll call it, about the achievement of reaching 1,000 yards, I think it is important to acknowledge those kind of wins, especially because Hopkins is going to be a part of whatever they're building towards next season. And a lot of this is about what they're building towards next season. That's why I think it's so important for Will Levis to play. Ryan Tannehill's reps with DeAndre Hopkins no longer matter, really. Will Levis and every opportunity he can get to further work with that wide receiver so that they're ready to get off and rolling next year and can continue to build upon that to have some success, and hopefully with an improved offensive line situation anytime that they can get together is important, which is why I hope that Will Levis plays if he's able to. But DeAndre Hopkins was asked about potentially or getting close to reaching 1,000 yards this season and being the first to do so for this franchise since Arthur Juan Brown.
That line from Will because Will's injured, you know, do you think they change much for you guys as receivers?
No, not really. I played with a lot of different quarterbacks, so for me, I'm used to that switch up. More of a challenge.
Are you someone do you keep track of your stats, or are they something you take notice of?
No, I've never kept up with my stats. Just something I really never did till after the season.
Well, you're on pace for a 1,000-yard season. It's been a while. Actually, A.J. Brown was the last one. Does that mean anything to you that you could get this receiving core back in that mark?
Of course that means something to me. To have 1,000 yards isn't easy in this league, especially when you play with different quarterbacks. Trying to build a chemistry at receiver isn't the easiest thing, especially when it's your first year with a team. So to be able to do that with two different quarterbacks, I feel like that's almost as hard, as hard as going out there getting 1,400 yards.
What about when it comes to incentives? Yeah, I mean, you got some incentives in the contract, can make some money with some of these statistical markers. Do you keep track of those at all?
No, I don't. Let my agent do that.
I just think Ryan kind of stepped back in and handled the week.
Like a vet. We expect Ryan to come out with energy, try to finish this season strong.
For those of us who aren't in the receiver meetings like you are, just how important was NWI for what you guys did? How much will you guys miss him not being out there?
NWI is a hard worker. You ask him to do anything, he's going to do it. So, of course, we're going to miss him out there, but this is the NFL, next man up mentality, and that's why you get guys in the off-season. That's why guys practice every day to step up.
You've been in this situation before during the seasons where the playoff implications, where the game doesn't necessarily mean anything from playoff standpoint. What do you say to the younger guys or guys who haven't about playing for each other and kind of playing for pride?
I really don't see it. I'm not, the biggest, vocal person as far as, trying to cheer guys up. If you're in the league and, you need someone else to motivate you, then you might be in the wrong business. So, I expect everybody to come out here and do their job, no matter, if we were one in whatever the record was. It's what you're supposed to love to do.
That's DeAndre Hopkins. And I think that last part's really important. And it really articulates the difference between, the mindset of young dudes, rookies, Will Levis, Tyjae Spears, Jalen Duncan, who still have a little bit of, I don't know, is collegiality a word? Having just come out of college, playing for the logo on your helmet, right? Playing for school pride, playing for a fan base, college football fan bases, especially the guys who have come out of places like Tulane's got a really fun fan base. Kentucky football actually has a really good fan base, playing in the SEC and things like that, especially Tulane having just come off the Cotton Bowl win last year, or in Tyjae Spears last year there. So you've got those guys who have a level of excitement and a level of newness to them where they haven't been jaded and worn down by what the league is. And then you have Hopkins, who I think holds them to a different kind of a standard. It's a good counterbalance to kind of remind guys and be like, hey, if you need me to give you a pep talk before we go out there and play a football game, we're not doing the same thing. You go out there and you play football because you love it. You go out there and play football, but and even if you don't love it, because it's how you feed your family, because you love your family or something like that. This is a job for a lot of dudes, especially a lot of dudes who have seen the true business side of the NFL, and Hopkins is certainly one of them. So I think it's good perspective from both sides. And like I said, if Levis can play on Sunday, I would love to see him get as many reps as humanly possible with DeAndre Hopkins. Lamar Daniel says they can work together all offseason. That deplorable offensive line will get him killed. Yeah, but there's no way to replicate those game reps, Lamar. I know it's scary. Football is scary. Football is scarier if you're the ones playing it. And if Will Levis wants to get out there and play, and he's medically cleared to play, and he's in good enough shape to protect himself while he plays, then I think that everybody, including Will Levis and Mike Vrabel, would probably be in agreement about him playing. Anyway, that's going to do it for us on this Friday. Hey, have a great holiday. I'm going to be working on Christmas Eve. We're not doing the primetime show, but we will do the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff. Me and Blaine Bishop, Titans legend, the Hitman, Mickey Ryan, a legend in his own right, Kayla Anderson will be hanging out. We'll be doing the pregame. I'll be at the stadium covering the game. Have something up on A2ZSports.com. So it'll be a little lighter duties over the course of the next couple of days. Primetime will be back on Tuesday. The radio show will also be back on Tuesday. And so we'll cram a bunch of college football playoff stuff, Titans and Seahawks reaction, and get you ready for a divisional game on the road next week when we get back at it. Have a great afternoon, like I said, and have a great holiday. And we will see you guys next